Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adiba from Uniswa. On this day, I will bring up a topic about what is autism, and I will focus more about the Autplay Therapy. This presentation is for practitioners, parents, or even families who are interested to know more about how to do play therapy for their loved ones. By the end of this talk, you'll be familiar with an Autplay Therapy and hopefully can implement the way it should be. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Before we start, I would like to tell the topics that we're going to talk about today. I'll start off by telling you the definitions of the Autplay Therapy and autism, along with the statistics according to World Health Organization in 2019. For the next couple of topics are about the Autplay Therapy, which are the types of Autplay. There are two: directive play and follow me. I'll also let you know how to implement this Autplay Therapy for practitioners and family. I'll close my presentation by telling you the three main primary target areas about this Autplay Therapy. Like I've said earlier, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. This presentation will take for around 15 minutes. Before we start, I'd like you all to look at this picture. So what comes in your mind when I want you to look at this picture? And I've said that we're going to talk about autism. Is it kids with autism? Well, you can't really point out that a child has autism just by looking at a picture. We first need to understand well enough what autism is. So let's begin by the definition about autism and the Autplay Therapy. What we need to know first is that autism or autism spectrum disorders in children is usually when they have difficulties in verbal and non-verbal communication, social interactions, emotional regulations. And sometimes they also exhibit repeated body movements like clapping or rocking. They also have unusual responses to people or attachment to objects. A child on the severe end of the spectrum may be unable to speak and also have more serious developmental delays. And you can't really point out that children with ASD are the same. For example, let's take an example. There's two children that has ASD. One of them might have a low IQ, and on the other hand, they have an above average IQ. Therefore, each individual has their own place on the ASD to their individual functioning and skill level. Well, I've told you about the definitions to autism. Let's continue our main talk for today. We must know the definitions of the Autplay. Just for your information, there is no cure yet for ASD, but there are ways to help them get better on communicating, interacting socially, and helping them to be able to control and express their emotions. That's when this Autplay Therapy came in. An Autplay Therapy, shortened for Autism Play Therapy, is a play-based therapy for children who has autism. It uses toys, has targeted areas so that children with ASD are able to express their emotions, communicate, and connect with others. Well, I've explained about the definitions to both autism and Autplay Therapy. Therefore, we will continue to the statistics. ASD can occur in all racial, ethnic, and socio-economic groups. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention in 2015, Autism to Gender, autism is 5 times more common among boys rather than girls. So 1 in 54 boys has autism, and in girls it's 1 in 252. And just to let you know, the main cause for ASD so far is because genetics or chromosomal conditions. But what makes boys occur more common is still being researched. So in that case, according to the World Health Organization in 2019, one of 160 children worldwide had autism. So that's all the facts about the data I've showed you. Our next subject is the types of the Autplay Therapy. As we can see, there are two types of Autplay Therapy: the directive play and the follow me. Now what's the difference? Well, the directive play therapy is a controlled approach to play therapy in which the therapist is actively involved structuring a child's activity by providing selected play materials and encouraging the child to use them like in pretend situations and the expression of feelings. While on the other hand, the follow me is the opposite. It's when the therapist or practitioners follow the child while the child does their own activities. And here the practitioner's job is to make sure the child understand what they're doing, grow communication, and develop a relationship. Well, that's the two types of Autplay therapy. Let's go into our next subject, in which we will be knowing how to implement this Autplay therapy. First of all, teaching children with ASD is to improve their communication skill is essential for helping them reach their full potential. There are many different approaches, but the best treatment program begins early during the preschool years and is tailored to the child's age and interest. Firstly, let me tell you about implementing the directive Autplay. I've summed up into 4 sessions, which the 4 main sessions has each sessions in them. The intake and assessment, the directive play, and termination, also parent training. So the intake and assessment is a 4-session phase involving parents and child with ASD. The directive play is when the therapists or practitioners explain and implement directive play to both parents and children. When the goals have met, the treatment ends with what's called a termination, and then we go to a parent training where practitioners teach parents how to implement the therapy at home. Let's take a look further in every one of them. So the intake and assessment, like I've said earlier, has 4 sessions. The first session is the parent and practitioners, where they gather up information about the child and then finish all the paperwork to understand the background of the child, the background of the family. And then what the practitioner do is they introduce an Autplay to the parents. And then the second session is a session with practitioners and child, where they gain relationship and start filling the observation form. This session lasts for 45 minutes. So they do the first observation therapy in this session. On the third session is a session with parents and the child. This session lasts for 25 minutes. In this session, what the practitioner do is they observe the child playing with the parents and find the differences when the child plays with the practitioner and when the child plays with the parents. In this session, sometimes parents feel anxious, they don't feel like they're themselves, they don't feel normal, or sometimes they're not being the real them. So what you have to make sure is that you are being you, so that the practitioner actually can observe the differences, and then the practitioner would stand in the corner and observe. And then on the last session, on the 4th session, is a session for the child and practitioner. This is exactly like the second session. It's also to build relationship. Let's go on to the directive play and termination. So the first session is a session with parent and practitioners. The observation form has been filled. The practitioner understands the technique that needs to be done. So the practitioner tells the parent the kinds of techniques they're going to use. And then after that, on the second session is a session with the child and practitioners. They start to build a relationship using the techniques, using the techniques to play, and then gain relationship. And then on the third session is the parent with the child. So what happens here is the parent and the child starts to play using the technique that has been done, and then they find out has the goal been achieved or not. So this kind of thing lasts for a couple of weeks and a couple of days. If the goals have been achieved, there is a graduation party for the child, families, and practitioners to actually remind the child that you won't be coming here again, you won't meet the practitioner again. So I've told you about how to implement the directive play. Let's continue about a practitioner's guide for implementing the follow me approach, where first the practitioner should follow the child, where the child leads the practitioners and play. And what the practitioners do is they track and reflect. So practitioners make statements according to what the child is doing. For example, you go to a spot that has a box full of sand, and the kid starts playing. You just say, "Oh, you're playing a sand. You're scooping a sand that's the color of yellow." And also frequently ask questions. For example, I'll give you an example. So you've come to a spot where there has a lot of balls. You ask them, "What's your favorite color? Which of the ball that you like the most?" Why are you not touching the blue color of the ball? And also engage the child. Try to blend in and play with the child. Blend in and play with the child. Don't show it off that you are actually only making a track and tracking reflect, but also play with the child. When you do the follow me approach, also lead the child to directive games. Make them follow what you do, like the directive play I've told earlier. Introduce them to new games or activity. Also monitor for dysregulation. You should be very sensitive about the child, whether he is sad or not comfortable with you around or doesn't want you to touch what he's touching. Make sure you're sensitive with that, to make sure that he's comfortable, to gain relationship, to make sure that he needs you to be there. He makes you to be his or her walking alive human diary. And always be mindful of goals. Focus on increasing child's comfort and relationship development, not just playing with the child. In doing this Autplay therapy, whether it is the directive Autplay or the follow me approach, parents and families can actually implement this at home without the help of practitioners. Although there are some considerations for practitioners when teaching parents, and that we will talk about in the next subject. So, considerations when teaching parents. The first thing is the home setting must be structured with sessions. And variations of the play should make you feel comfortable. Don't force yourself that, oh, in the therapist's room they have this, but I don't have this, how do I find it? You feel like you really need that. No, it's okay. Just whatever makes you comfortable. And also it would be better if each parent or my family members have separate playtimes. Why? Because this Autplay therapy is for building relationship, communicating from child to other individuals. So the child would actually understand, oh, this is my dad, this is my mother, this is my sister, this is how dad plays with me, this is how he treats me, this is how she treats me. And therefore the child would actually know how to control and express their emotions, their feelings towards different individuals. But make sure that members in the family which would be involved has to meet the practitioner, so that the practitioners would say that he's valuable to actually implement or take part in playtimes and so on. And the important thing is always make time on your schedule, not find time. So out of all your busyness and everything on that day, make sure you find a schedule for your loved one, not find time in your busyness days. I've told you about the considerations when teaching parents. Now let's talk about the three main primary target areas when we do this Autplay therapy. So the first one is the emotional regulation. Emotional regulation refers to the process by which individuals influence which emotions they have, when they have them, and how they experience to express their feelings. With the help of implementing Autplay therapy, our loved ones will hopefully feel they have a compass that guides them in the right directions and powers that are their emotions. And the other one is social skill development. Knowing that an Autplay therapy is a combination of play between the child, parent, and practitioners, doing the Autplay will help them to be able to develop a social skill development. It would help them to communicate with others daily in a variety of ways, whether it's verbal or non-verbal. And of course, relationship development, because it makes the child communicate to us effectively and efficiently without us knowing what they really mean. It helps to grow relationship in families and other human beings. Well, I've told you about the primary target areas, which means we have come to the end of this presentation. I'd like to sum up. So, children with autism means children who don't have the ability to verbal and non-verbal communications, emotional regulations, and below average maintaining. Knowing this, of course, that until now, there are no cure yet for ASD. But there is an Autplay, which is a play-based education therapy special for children with autism to help them be able to communicate to us, build relationship, and feel the same way. There are two types of Autplay. There's the directive play and the follow me. So what makes the difference when the directive Autplay is when the children follows you what you're doing with toys that are educational to help them communicate with you. And then there's the follow me approach. It's the opposite, where you follow the child, make statements, track, and reflect. Of course, doing this Autplay has target areas which include emotional regulation, social skill development, and building relationship in families. Just like Harry Margot, a professional speaker, a best-selling author, a consultant, and an anti-bullying activist who was diagnosed with autism at 4, he said autism doesn't come with an instruction guide, it comes from a family who will never give up. So we have come to the end of my presentation. I hope that you will never give up so we can make a better world for everyone. Are there any questions before I close the topic for today? Thank you very much for your attention. I hope we can meet again someday. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.